The movie is about seeing your children grow up so fast. That's the feeling that I wanted to capture. And oftentimes, strangely, fiction can be more truthful for your emotions than actually saying, hey, this is what happened to me, this is what happened, what I feel like for my daughter. I'm gonna use fictional characters, and it's weird, you can almost say it with more purity. These movies, they represent where I am at each moment. Unbreakable represents where I was, and Split represents where I was, and The Visit, and you name it. And then my father and mother who are getting, very old, and what do I feel about that when I go there and the roles have switched? We just keep moving so fast through life. You make all of these problems for them, all of the physical problems, all of the thriller problems, all of the personal problems, and the answer is ultimately just being present. If you can, for one moment in your freaking life, just be present, just right there, it's so freeing. That's the goal of the movie. In real life, my children have grown up now, and they're adults, and they're amazing artists, and I had a chance to bring Ashana with me to second unit direct on the film. Or just be ready to rock and roll on that.
All right, guys, are you ready?
All right, bring them.
Can we go back to one a little slower than that? Okay, let's do it. Let's start the zoom.
And
action! So I essentially grew up on sets, grew up kind of looking over my dad's shoulder from the time I can ever remember. Like, there's many pictures of us together. So essentially I've grown up like kind of watching this experience, and this is the first time that we get to actually work together in a professional environment. I've worked on his show before, but this being his movie has been such a special experience for us. Learning how to support him in a professional sense and also in a familial sense, and it's a really beautiful thing.
I feel much better. Better than before.
And cut.
I started out kind of peering over his shoulder, over the monitor, or as he's looking at casting, or as he's talking about his script and development of the script. So in that sense, I've been very observational in all of his different movies. And now as I am sort of beginning my own career in film, he's asked me for more advice, and we have a lot of wonderful creative conversations.
And the whole idea of going to another place, leaving Philadelphia for the first time and going somewhere else, and especially going and being in an outdoor location and seeing if I could impose that formalism in an amorphous space like a beach. Leaving home to make a movie was scary for me, the idea of will I have the connection to the emotions and the bass, and will I feel secure enough to do kind of paint the painting in a confident way. And having Ashana there made me feel like I never left home.
There's 3 of us, so 3 sisters, and he just loves us so much and makes sure we know that all the time. And particularly with our creative endeavors or career things that we're learning and experimenting, they're like his own things. Like, what we create is what he creates. So I think he feels very special when we create something to that level. It's a form of love.
I'm super close with my daughter, so they just make me happy. So it's like having her there was amazing. And then just to have her on one side of the beach shooting, second unit while I was shooting over here. And then at the end of the day, we would go and have dinner together, and kept me centered on the storytelling and all. And if you see the movie, there's so many of the shots that she shot. And then Salika wrote the song that the main character sings and through the piece.
Someday, no monument's made in my name. There is no life I trade. You are my reason to remain.
My dad said he wanted to be a romance, and he wanted to kind of be about this tumultuous love that's all-encompassing, and kind of described to me the relationship that he wanted it to be. In a way, it's not super different, because I feel like in my own songs I draw on things that I'm reading or listening to or feeling or going through, so I was able to do that just with the movie. And the movie is so intertwined with our family and our lives that it felt very already connected to me. I didn't have to kind of force that in any way. It's an exaggeration of real life. It's not even science fiction. Like, one day is just an exaggeration of how it feels. It really does. Like, life goes by so fast. We should be treating it like we only have one day to live and experience all this stuff. To me, it's just like a metaphor for real life. It's not even science fiction in a way. It's such a beautiful and intriguing story, and it was kind of easy to kind of take that and write a song from it.
Always the kids in the movies that I make are reflective of the ages of my kids. So like in Signs, Abigail Breslin was 5 and Salika was 5. So like Abigail and Salika went trick-or-treating and on the set of Signs, and in Split, they're teenagers that get abducted that are, you know, late teens, and the girls were late teens at that point, and, you know, everything kind of mimics where they're at. That's just where my emotion is. That's where, when I, you know, go home and they tell their stories of heartbreak or this or troubles or their aspirations, I can't help but see it through their eyes.
Cupid's an archer, his violent departure leaves us at the altar, wounded, weak, and ready to bleed. I'll wash away someday.
It is amazing to be a small part of it. It's amazing. And to feel like he respects, you know, me and my sister enough and the work that we do enough to kind of include it or incorporate it into his art, which is, you know, this movie is such a masterpiece, is like the highest form of like praise and approval that you could get from a father. Just to have him even want or even think to include us in this, I feel like for me that was a huge moment of, wow, my dad like really believes in me. Like, this is the highest praise that he could have ever given me, to include me in this.
When she was a little baby, she used to sing in the car, and we went, wow, one thing we know, she's not gonna be a singer, because she was so bad. She was a little baby, and now she's one of the most beautiful singers in the world. And I can't believe that I actually said those words, and then she grew up to be this thing, and that feeling that I just described in you of like, wow, your own children astonish you.
Camera set, background! Fan moving, background. And action!
Since I was a kid and I saw Kurosawa's Ran and Kurosawa's Rashomon, the idea of like outdoor spaces with very formalistic movements and framing really intrigued me. And I wondered what that would be like in a really amorphous space like a beach. It's just no angles, so we add all the angles with our movements. And I really enjoyed that experience. It was almost like theater, because I'm making it structured in a very structural place. You know, I have a very formalistic way of telling stories. I write everything and then I storyboard everything out, and I see the images really clearly, and that can be very confining and restrictive. But what I love is actors that messy all that up, raw actors, theater-trained actors that can be loose within a framework.
We have a restraint and limitations. We have to go into that kind of journey to work around it, to understand it, to even incorporate it.
It's a really interesting challenge for an actor, because it's both confined to a frame that he's chosen, a position that he's chosen, and then within that he allows so much freedom.
And it's been fascinating to be in a movie that basically has no coverage. We shoot over and over again until it settles in for night.
But the only way that really works is if you are genuinely present. And so it's dangerous and beautiful. And they felt that. They would go home every night and there'd be this high because we do this incredibly complex thing that took 2 hours to do, and there's 2 valid takes. That's it. Wow, that was like we were on stage. That was beautiful. Is this how it's going to be every day? They were loving that high that came from the danger of like, I don't know why I reacted to you that way.
Everyone is there in one location, together at the same time, supporting each other as actors, supporting each other as characters. And again, that reminds me of being in the theatre. So for me, this is familiar territory, only this time it's on film.
I want you to be feeling scared and dangerous like on theater. And when you go on theater, you can't think your way on stage. You just go with the intention, and then the first word comes out in the play and it's angry. Well, that's the note today, and everyone has to react to that for the rest of the play. Just keep on going in that direction.
We come to the set, and I'm used to, you know, the master, the medium shot, the reverse, you know, the close-up, the reverse. And he doesn't do anything like that.
It's as though the outlines of the picture are clear, and we bring ourselves to fill in the outline because he knows exactly what it is he wants.
And cut! Beautiful take, we'll print that one.
Night says there's hunters and there are gatherers, and he's a hunter where he knows what he wants, because he spent so much time with the script, and every single line he included was intentional. And
he's precise about what he's precise about. You know, he's very precise about his words that he wrote. He's very precise about where the camera's going.
What I try to tell the actors and the crew members, if we're doing it correctly, we cannot duplicate it. It should be just us at that moment in time, who we were at that moment, at that very moment. That was it. We could never redo it ever again.
It's very specific. It's very like highly intense and emotional, and we're doing things in a very unique and precise way. And I think that's because, at least what I'm observing of my dad, is that he's a true auteur.
I don't shy away from darker or provocative things, because what I keep trying to do as I write is to imagine the very worst things, and would I survive that as a human being emotionally? When I come back out on the other side, can I be stronger for that experience? I don't ever think I make horror, ever. That's not what I ever would describe what I do. It's very dark. It's, you know, very disturbing and dark, but it's not horror. Horror has an almost sense like that's the destination, but this is meant to go through and come out on the other side with a belief system stronger for it.
And cut. The collaboration process on this movie has been different to any other. Because Knight wrote this movie and he's directing this movie, he's a producer, he's a writer, he's going to have a cameo in this film, he's all over it. So that's reassuring, because you feel like you have this nucleus of reassurance and intelligence. Whatever you need to know, any questions you have about the film, Knight can 100% answer those.
I had a style in my head for the movie, which was to use angular movements, not straight, so the camera wouldn't come to you, but would be on like an angle as we're getting closer, but we're not going right at you. That was to create kind of shapes in an amorphous space on a beach. What ends up happening is that you have a painting at the front, and then you do this angle thing, and there's a second painting at the end of the movement. And the characters, the hope was like they would be in a configuration, and then as they get to the thing, another painting would emerge. They're changing. That was one aspect. The other cinematic value we were using is that the camera would move independently of the events that they're recording. So that would represent, that movement would represent time. So time's moving, whether you're having an epiphany or you're crying or you figured it out, it's just gonna move like this. And whether you have that epiphany on camera, whatever, it's just gonna happen. And we go on to the next. I may get only the reaction to what you say. I may miss it entirely. And the audience can feel that the camera is just moving irregardless of what the script is doing. And that represents time and that constant, implacable movement of time through the piece. So we had a shot where we had this rig where the camera comes down as they all are gathering to talk about what to do. And then it turns, and then it becomes a shot that just spirals around all their faces. But we were gonna do it without regard to the dialogue. So almost no lines were on camera. Like, I'd say half the lines were not on camera, and big important epiphany lines just weren't on camera. But you were seeing, sometimes you're seeing an empty space between the characters, and sometimes you're seeing a reaction from a random character that's there. There's a beauty, and you lean in and you get this pressure of time as they're running out of time. They're running out of time. Figure this out. And then it's getting, whatever's happening off camera in that particular scene, something is physically happening to one of the characters, and it keeps spinning and spinning, and then it ends up with her. Then we meet her at the end, and the collapse happens. And so it's high risk. It's, a minute and a half. It's, all of that, and everybody has to be working. But that's the theater performance stuff that I really love.
It's hard to even see it as highly choreographed, because I think if everything is really working, it doesn't feel highly choreographed. Instead, it feels like this is now what you're doing.
I'm telling you, it allows an actor to just be an actor. I'm not thinking about what are the mechanics, what does this need to look like. watches the movement of any, and I trust him, believe me, his microscopic eye is seeing the minutiae of anything that isn't right. And he'll stop you and go, no, we're going to go back to the beginning.
So often I will push myself to extremes, because if I go further than is comfortable, on the way down from that, I'll hit upon something relaxed, which is at a higher pitch than I would have. It's a risky game, because it's a matter of trusting them not to use the takes when you make an idiot of yourself.
I have to give a lot of trust tonight that he knows what he wants, he knows what's going to work, and he knows what it'll look like. I have to surrender to that and go, he knows what's going to be good, he knows what's going to look good, so I trust completely in him.
Action. The casting process is a kind of a sacred thing, and it has to represent where I am. And where I am right now is celebrating the fact that I'm an immigrant, and I just kind of quietly took that, and put that aside, I think, my whole career, that I make movies in the United States. I was born in Pondicherry, India. My parents are full-blown, Indian and speak the language and have the culture from India, and I've been lucky enough to tell stories to everyone around the world and, do it from Hollywood, but I am an immigrant. We're doing it with immigrant leads that have accents, a Mexican accent and a German accent and, and an English accent, and it just represents the world, and I love that. I love that about it. It represents where I am. And cut. Aww.
Boy, y'all look at this! Hurry!
We looked everywhere, and when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere on the planet, for a place that could be this beach that I imagined in my head, that had walls and a beautiful cove, and it seems like there must be some place like this, but there were certain restrictions, like there couldn't be any trees, there couldn't be any life near there. It has to be desolate, just beach and then a rock wall.
We started looking for 2 specific locations, one being a private, magical beach, and then the other being a spectacular resort. And both had to really, seduce our characters when they showed up, and they felt like they were somewhere special and had this really, this feeling of, euphoria. And so we looked all over the world, literally all over the world. In the Dominican Republic, we found El Valle, which is this beautiful cove.
The idea of an isolated beach with the weight of a wall containing our guests for the next couple hours became more interesting for us visually and story-wise. And the idea of a beach that when we walk out and when we reveal it is something that you want to be at. You want to, take your sandals off, take your shirt off, and jump in the water. What then has to happen quickly is that same thing that was inviting to you, it was important that it became the villain in the story as it progressed, as that's what's actually containing us on this beach.
It becomes very claustrophobic for these individuals on this beach, and you can see them panicking, and they're trying to get out. There's no doors to leave, and that suffocation the audience feels. And what used to be beautiful now becomes oppressive and dangerous. The water, which looks so beautiful at first, just becomes death to you. That slow turn from something that was safe to something that's unsafe is a beautiful goal of ours in the movie.
Bringing old to life has been quite the process.
We literally did not have one more day on that beach. And then when we left, we had to go to the resort that was booked for that exact time because we had to take over that whole thing. There was no room for error at all. Even if it had rained one day.
We're going to be facing high winds, high surf, high tides, and shifting sand.
It took months to build this wall, 24 feet high by 900 feet long, which is massive.
Oh, that was perfect timing. I'll never get it that perfect again.
Okay, cut down rehearsal, resetting, pictures.
All right, picture, let's go.
There was probably a year of preparation for this movie, picking the location, figuring out how to do the process of aging and what, should we do that CGI, should we do it real?
We were shooting old in the middle of the height of the pandemic, and we were forced into shoot it in the hurricane season in the Caribbean. You can't get insurance for COVID. You can't get insurance for hurricanes. This is insanity going to go shoot in there, because at any moment you could be shut down by a hurricane, let alone COVID.
When we got here, we cut a road into the beach, which didn't exist. We created a base camp, which didn't exist. And we started building the wall on a beach that had 100 feet of sand out in front of it at any given day.
We built the wall, and then a hurricane hit. We just decided to build it again, but build it back as far away we could get from the water and as close to the trees to protect it.
When you see the movie, it will be seamless between the organic real wall and our constructed wall.
Naaman did an incredible job building this wall on that beach. It looks absolutely real.
We knew day one when we scouted this beach that it was a protected preserve for two types of sea turtles. We had a local on our crew that was just in charge of staking out and making sure that not only us didn't affect them, but the local dogs, the local people, the local tourists. And all we had to do was make sure that we knew where they were at. We knew that these huge turtles that are, 1 meter shells come up, they dig a huge hole, they lay their eggs. On their way out, they dig another hole as a decoy, and then they go off. They do this every year.
There's a lot of stray dogs in the Dominican.
What is the Dominican name for this stray dog?
We call him viralatas. It's because they turn around trash cans looking for food scraps and stuff like that. And sometimes it had been a problem because they have actually walked into a take.
It did add, again, a sense of that this place was alive, and we were lucky to be there.
This is Patricia. We gave her that name. As you might have seen, she is limping. So we're pitching in to send her to the vet.
In fact, my assistant adopted one of those dogs. You have to shoot the beginning of the script in the morning, and the middle of the script in the middle of the day, and the end of the script at the end of the day, every day. And then on top of it, the hurricane season kept on taking the beach away, eating the beach away. We had to become experts in the motion of water and how many joules of energy are in waves. And we had to learn all of that to say, hey, at 2 p.m., we're gonna lose most of the beach as the high tide comes in. We have to get this scene and that scene done.
Visita mi canal.
There was no room for error at all. We shot this in a very specific amount of time, and we literally did not have one more day. That's how tight it was. The idea that we got to make this movie and tell this story was very precious to us. That last moment on the beach for the family.
It was such an emotional night. It was like 3 a.m. in the morning. Guy and Priska, it was the dying scene just before we'd done a scene where Maddox sings to Priska, like it was just so high in emotion.
Guy was lying there and he was dead. And when the director called cut, he sat up and he said, "What a beautiful family I have." And in this scene, it was like as if he was rounding it up, saying, "Thank you, and I can see you." I felt loved and I felt seen, so I cried.
Through comfort and pain, till I wash away. You were all that
There was mourning and grief and crying and like relief, and I don't know, it was kind of the perfect scene to end on for all of us, because we'd had this massive experience. We'd really built what felt like a mum, dad, daughter, brother relationship. It felt really intense.
The four of us had really formed a deep, irreplaceable, complicated bond. It was just one of these moments where the lines between reality and the depth of the movie intertwined, and realizing that in this whole process we'd all really fallen in love with each other.
When an experience kind of culminates like that scene, well, it hits you. No, it hits you, and you know, it's nice to feel kind of a closing, you know, and a kind of a thank you to your fellow colleagues, and that's why we hugged, because at the end, for a moment, we were a family.
That was so special because my whole family was able to be there, like both my sisters and my mom, and obviously my dad was directing, and then we're watching this family kind of act this scene that's kind of based on our family and reflecting of our family and like all things that we've been through, and so much kind of culminating to that, and it was really magical. I'm so lucky that I got to be there to see that and to see Thomasin sing the song as well.
That night was very tender, very. He's usually very clear about his vision and about what he wants. There was a point where I felt I cannot go further in my emotion because it's too much. And I asked him to stop. And he said yes. He didn't even think about it.
The art form is so complex, right? Film is so many art forms together, so I have to write something with true feeling of vulnerability, and it has to come from something real. And then you have to find artists, actors that get that and don't try to corrupt it and really do their own version, take that thing that I was talking about and then bring it through their instruments. And what you try to do is have the real life and what you're trying to immortalize on film be truthful.
And this is so beautiful.
That was the specificity. Didn't have anything covering us. We didn't do anything to protect ourselves, and we weren't trying to be disingenuous about who we are, you know? You can feel when a human being is very truthful at that moment and saying, this is me, you know? And that night that happened. This was the last time we were going to be on that beach. We finished shooting, and we did this ceremony where one of the crew members told us how to, you know, thank the beach and for what it allowed us to do, and certainly we were allowed to be there. You know, I feel very blessed to have gotten this opportunity here. I mean, a lot of you probably don't know, but most of you do know, like 3 days before we were about to shoot here, there was no beach. The days before we started shooting, the beach started coming back and the weather started calming, and I think this is our 27th day on the beach of shooting. 27 days of perfect weather for us to shoot this. The beach has come all the way back, and part of the ceremony is we're gonna take the flowers and just offer them back to the ocean and be grateful. Unbelievably grateful to be here on this night. So thank you. We made an incredibly special movie on this beach. People forever are going to come to this beach looking for this wall, and it's not going to be here. But let's just all take this one moment and go back to our lives and all of that stuff. But really, this is a magical beach. And just, you know, you can think whatever grateful thoughts. They actually said you could ask for something if you wanted from the ocean. But I got everything I wanted. So I'm just going to be grateful. So we'll go to the ocean.